Singleton, and I serve as the Policy Director for the Border Network for Human Rights. I will be moderating today's press conference. We want to thank the family of Xavier Hernandez, the legal partners, the civil rights organizations, community leaders, and the members of press for being here today. We are here today to address the killing of Xavier Hernandez and to demand accountability, transparency, and meaningful change. This press conference is not only about one life lost, it is about a system that has repeatedly failed our community and continues to do harm. Today, you're going to hear from legal counsel, civil rights leaders, and community advocates. We ask that this space is treated with respect and care, especially as we center the voices of the family. At this time, I'd like to invite Robert Melendez of the Melendez Law Firm to provide a welcome and overview of the case.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. Like she said, my name is Robert Melendez. I'm from El Paso, and I represent Angie Lujan, mother of Xavier Hernandez, who was killed brutally by the El Paso Police Department on July 13th of last year. He was only 30 years young. The case we filed this morning in federal court is Angie's effort to honor her son by doing what she can to prevent this from happening to someone else's kid. It is her hope that through this case, the El Paso community will be informed and empowered to demand and obtain desperately needed changes to El Paso police training, practices, and policies. Xavier should have been met by a member of the crisis intervention team, but city leaders have chosen to undervalue, underfund, and understaff that team, while at the same time allowing for a widespread practice of abusing their citizens' civil rights that has again led to another clearly preventable death. This time, they killed Xavier with nearly 10 minutes of choking and oxygen starvation, all while he was subdued, handcuffed, face down, and under their complete control, just like George Floyd, but for an even longer amount of time. Xavier died from 10 minutes of oxygen starvation while they choked his neck, pinned him down, and kneeled on his back till he died a horrific death by suffocation. With some of his last breaths, he pleaded with the police officers, "Don't kill me." 3 times he pleaded with them, "Don't kill me." But they wouldn't get off of him. He begged them, "Help me. Help me. Help me. Help me." 4 times, but they didn't care. They stayed on top of him until his last breath, and he died under severe torment and mental anguish that no one asking for help, responded to by those who claim to protect and serve, should ever, ever suffer. The El Paso County medical examiner ruled his death a homicide due to chest compression asphyxia. Xavier was suffering a mental health crisis due to being heartbroken and was self-medicating his depression, which led to the El Paso police being called for assistance. He asked the initial officer to call 911 and for the officer's badge number. Yet the officer chose to violate written police policy by not encouraging communication, not demonstrating empathy, but instead he began yelling at Xavier, raising the tension, and threatening to tase him, even though Xavier had his hands up and was at most only giving passive resistance to being handcuffed. Instead of using de-escalation techniques, the officers chose to resort to the violence that this city has sanctioned time and time again, that they know is leading to preventable deaths of El Pasoans and others who they are supposed to be protecting and serving. Everyone in law enforcement well knows how deadly prone position force is, which is continued pressure to the neck, to the back, or the chest while someone is face down and handcuffed. Yet El Paso city leaders encourage it by their indifference to its continued use by their police officers. A pattern of civil rights violations over the last 14 years is detailed in our federal complaint, which was filed this morning. And it has specific accounts of the city's demonstrated indifference and cover-ups after these civil rights violations occur. And it's the same method of operation. And they are, number one, always blame the victim and that they are perpetrating a crime on the police. Number two, don't conduct a legitimate investigation. Number three, do not hold officers accountable. Number four, do not provide adequate training. And number five, do not enact or enforce policies that eliminate prone position force after someone is controlled and not a threat. That's common sense. The El Paso Police Department's own written guidelines at the time they killed Xavier stated that responding to the mentally ill, the officer shall utilize de-escalation techniques, encourage communication, and demonstrate empathy. Xavier received nowhere near anything like that. The El Paso police created chaos by immediately using brutal force and even allowing and directing a random person, a motorist, a passerby who was not even a police officer, to join in their brutality of Xavier. They then used this chaos they created as an illegitimate excuse to use more and more force that eventually killed him. And we all know ICE is doing the exact same thing throughout this nation. This has to stop, and it is Angie's promise to her son that his death and this case will bring justice for him, justice for her family, and change that the El Paso community so desperately needs, or someone else's child will be the next death at the hands of the El Paso Police Department. It has been 6 months. The criminal justice system in El Paso is doing nothing about this. So Angie now seeks civil justice to bring about the change this community deserves now, and Xavier, her son, deserved then. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Jeff Edwards.
Thank you, Rob. My name is Jeff Edwards, and I represent the estate of Xavier Hernandez, basically Xavier. Together with Rob Melendez, it's a true honor to fight for this cause. In a nutshell, what this case is about is holding a police department and its police officers accountable for a senseless, unnecessary, and cruel act of police violence that led to the death of that young man, that beautiful young man up there. Brother, son, I have the honor of representing many victims of civil rights abuses throughout the country, throughout the state. I can tell you that this is as egregious a case as my firm has handled. Mr. Melendez talked about a number that I want to let sink in. 10 minutes. That is almost 2 minutes longer than the officer placed his knee on George Floyd. Where is the outcry? Where is the mayor? Where is the chief of police? And where is the district attorney? This case is as egregious as George Floyd. The officers involved breached every legitimate police practice. They engaged in cruel, unnecessary, despicable conduct. They found someone in distress, essentially asking for help, and they used violence. That suggests to me that an entire department needs to be retrained, and it needs to begin from the very top. The chief of police, the assistant chiefs need to be retrained. These officers need to be held accountable for their actions, as does the chief of police. This cannot be allowed to continue. 10 minutes. Nobody made a split-second call out here. They kept this young man, knee in the back, unable to breathe, for 10 minutes and essentially suffocated him. A jury will eventually hear how extraordinarily and incredibly painful that is. And that's before you get to the pain of this wonderful mom not getting to drive to work with her son like she did every day. This beautiful sister not getting to play with her brother and be mentored by him. Again, I don't want to belabor the fact this one is egregious. And it is a true honor to be affiliated with Mr. Melendez and his outstanding law firm, to be representing his wonderful family. And I am grateful that the press is here, and I'm grateful that community organizations understand the severity of this. And it is about accountability and change and meaningful reform. But it starts by acknowledging what happened here was absolutely unacceptable. And I urge you to ask the mayor's office, the city council, the chief of police for an actual comment. They've seen the videos. They won't give it. But this isn't about litigation, it's about justice. And unfortunately, it may require a trial, but that's exactly what we're here to do. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. At this time, we want to center the voices that matter most. We now invite the family of Xavier Hernandez to share their words.
My name is Angelica Luján, and I am Xavier's mother. On July 13th, my son was crying out for help. He was in pain, in crisis, and he begged someone call 911, please. He wasn't met with compassion or care. He was met with tasers, chokeholds, fists, and the crushing weight of officers pinning him down face first on burning asphalt until he could no longer breathe. My son died with his hands behind his back in handcuffs, unarmed, begging for mercy. He did not deserve to die like this. No one deserves to die like this. And when more officers and medical personnel arrived, instead of rushing to save his life, they stood around laughing and talking like it was a backyard barbecue. Where was the urgency? Where was the humanity? Where was the compassion for my son's life? Xavier's death has been ruled a homicide. That word is heavy, but it does not carry the weight of a mother's grief. It does not bring my son back to me. I live with the sound of his last words, "Help me," in my head every day, every minute. I am stuck in the moment my son died forever. When are we going to be mad enough to not just demand change, but to also receive it? This is not just my son's story. This is the reality of the current world we live in. I am fighting for my son, Xavier, but this fight is bigger than my son. It is about justice, it is about humanity, and it is about stopping this behavior law enforcement demonstrate on a daily basis. If they are willing to take his life in broad daylight while people are filming, imagine what is being done when no one is watching. Every single life matters. Every single one. My son, Xavier's life mattered. We will not stop until there is justice and change. It's been 6 months without my son. Not a day goes by that my heart doesn't ache for him. I wake up missing him. I go to sleep missing him. I miss saying his name. Grief walks with me everywhere. My son deserved life, kindness, and help, not what he received. When he was struggling, he needed care. He needed people trained to see his pain as a crisis, not a threat. He needed help, not force. Xavier deserved to be healed. He deserved time. He deserved to be here with us, the family who loves him and misses him so. 6 months later, I still wake up with the reality that my child is gone, and that nothing in the world prepares a mother for that. We fight for justice for my son, but justice for every single one that has lost their life here.
Good morning. My name is Alexandra, and Xavier is my big brother. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to every single one of you for showing up and for putting in your part and your effort. It means the entire world to me and my family. Truly, from the bottom of all of our grieving hearts, God bless every single one of you guys. I don't understand a great many things, but I know that this world is slow to forgive and quick to judge. We are hardened by pride and ruined by ethical hypocrisies written as moral truths. So why love? I know why I did, and I know why I will continue to. I love because I was loved first. I was loved by my brother, a man of few words, of quiet and awkward demeanor, a soul more frightened by the demons in his head than the ones under his bed. He knew what it was like to be in pain. So with that logic, that's exactly why he was always so kind to others. My sisters would always snicker at my bedhead, and he would ask me how I slept. When he'd open his Christmas gifts, he'd always flush with joy and avert his gaze. If the silence stretched too long, he'd fill it with miscellaneous facts I'd never think to hear. Now, the silence stretches from our shattered hearts to heaven's solemn tears. Between every pause of my thoughts, I hear his voice. In every echo of the valley's heartbeat, I hear his footfalls. The phantom of his love grazes the breaking folds of my heart, the agony driving me to my knees. Some days, I resist the healing hands of God, because if this grief is the last connection I have to him, then I want to be in pain forever. This unjust world is filled with such beautiful colors, tasteful colors, vibrant colors, different colors. We were meant to mix, to coexist, and to create hues from the essence of our beings. When did we let such violent bloodshed stain our hearts? How will we let our lives be led in bleak, muted tones when we all deserve to live life in color? I believe God did not want our canvas to drip in red, and yet he has seen his children succumb to such wicked discrimination. We can do better, because we have to do better. For Xavier, and for the millions of others oppressed by systems meant to protect them. We remember them and remember their names. You remember my brother's name. Justice for them all. Thank you.
Thank you to the Hernandez family for their strength and their courage to stand and speak here today. I will now provide my remarks as the Policy Director for the Border Network for Human Rights. Talking about what this community is in need of. I stand before you today because accountability, transparency, and oversight are not abstract policy concepts. These matters of life and death, they are matters of life and death. They are about whether calling for help in our city leads to care or to violence. Over and over again in El Paso, we have seen the same devastating pattern play out. Police are dispatched to respond to mental health crisis. The individual is unarmed, they are vulnerable, they are in distress, and instead of de-escalation, compassion, or medical support, the response is force. We've witnessed people being tased repeatedly, restrained while pleading for air, pinned to the ground long after any perceived threat has passed. We have seen pressure applied to necks and backs, bodies crushed into pavement, and lives lost while officers remain on top of someone who is already restrained and no longer resisting. These are not isolated incidents. These are not unfortunate accidents. These are predictable outcomes of a system that has failed to train officers properly, failed to invest in non-police crisis response, and failed to hold officers accountable when excessive force is used. For years, community members have raised concerns about a culture within the El Paso Police Department that prioritizes force over care and secrecy over transparency. Internal investigations too often clear officers of wrongdoing. Disciplinary processes lack independence. The public is kept in the dark while families are left searching for answers. When a department investigates itself behind closed doors, trust erodes. When video evidence raises serious questions about accountability, but accountability never follows, harm is normalized. And when city leaders delay action, abuse becomes institutionalized. Let me be clear. Accountability is not anti-police. Transparency is not radical. Oversight is no longer an option. These are the basic safeguards required in any institution that is given the authority to use force. We cannot continue to rely on internal policies that have already failed our community dozens of times. We cannot accept a system where patterns of excessive force are documented, repeated, and then ignored. And we cannot accept that families must turn to lawsuits and public outcry just to be heard. Calling 911 during a mental health crisis should not be a death sentence in the city of El Paso. True accountability means independent investigations when someone is injured or killed in police custody. It means public access to findings, real disciplinary consequences, and a civilian oversight commission with the power to act, not just to advise. Transparency means timely release of information, all body camera footage, and clear communication with the community. It means ending the culture of silence that protects institutions at the expense of human life. Oversight means listening to the people most impacted, families, advocates, Communities that have lived with the consequences of unchecked power far too long. At the Border Network for Human Rights, we believe that every person deserves dignity, safety, and justice, regardless of their mental health, their circumstances, or the moment they are experiencing. We are calling on city leaders to act now, not tomorrow, not after the next tragedy. Because how many more lives must be lost before we say enough? Accountability delayed is justice denied, and our community deserves better. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce the representative for LULAC.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Raymond Seda. I'm the LULAC National Vice President for the Southwest. Joining me is Carlos Aguilar, our District Director in El Paso. We're based in El Paso. We want to join the family, the attorneys, the NAACP in this very difficult moment. Today we grieve the death of Xavier Hernandez, and we stand in solidarity with his mother, Angie Lujan, his three sisters, and we want you to hear this plainly. You are not alone. LULAC stands with you, and we will stand with you for as long as it takes to seek justice for Xavier. Xavier was 30 years old. On July 13, 2025, he was experiencing a mental health crisis on a highway overpass in El Paso. In that moment, he needed care and de-escalation, not violence. When the first officer arrived, Xavier pleaded for help. He asked the officer to call 911. He held his arms out to show his hands were empty, showing he was unarmed and not a threat. Instead of de-escalation, a taser drawn almost immediately, threats were made, and Xavier was tased immediately and repeatedly. Xavier was punched, forced to the ground, and subjected to pressure to his neck. After he was handcuffed, face down, hands behind his back, multiple officers piled on top of him, using their knees and body weight to pin him down for nearly 10 minutes. Xavier gasping for air, begging for help, pleading, "Don't kill me." Moments before he went silent, dying from oxygen starvation while restrained. Those words should haunt every person in authority who hears them and does nothing. This is why civil rights matter. No one should lose their life because they are distressed and need help. The unconstitutional excessive force and failure by standing officers to intervene, this was not an isolated breakdown, but a predictable result of a pattern. Failures to train, supervise, investigate, and discipline, along with failures to make reasonable, life-saving modifications required when someone is experiencing a mental health disability, as protected under federal law. Thank God cameras are now required on police officers. And I want to recognize former City Representative Henry Rivera. 10 years ago, he had to fight the city of El Paso and the city police to make sure that every police officer had a camera. Now we're going to be able to see the truth. We are seeking justice for Xavier, Angie, and his sisters, who have spoken about the pain of realizing this can happen to any of us, and about not wanting another mother to feel what she feels. She said, "Enough is enough," and she is right. Javier's case also points to what many communities have learned the hard way. When harmful tactics become routine, when officers face no consequences, when the duty to protect life is replaced with a culture of impunity, more families suffer. So today, LULAC is demanding three things. First, accountability, full transparency, independent scrutiny, and consequences for any officer who unlawfully uses force, and for any officer who watched a fellow officer violate someone's rights and did nothing. Second, reform. Policies that treat mental health crisis as a public health challenge, not a battlefield. Training and resources that prioritize de-escalation and medical care, and strict limits on prone restraint and neck pressure, with an immediate duty to reposition and render aid. Third, dignity, because Javier's death was a human being and his life had value. Angie, we stand with you today in this community, and the whole community is with you. We will amplify your voice, we will support your pursuit of truth, and we will keep pressing until Javier's death leads to real change, so that asking for help never becomes a death sentence. May Javier rest in peace, and may we honor him by refusing to accept anything less than justice.
Thank you, Mr. Mancetta. Now we will hear from the representative from the NAACP.
Good morning. My name is Carl Dwyer. I'm the president of the local branch of the El Paso NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We released a statement about a week after this incident happened, because it was very concerning, because it also showed a repeated pattern that is becoming all too common, not only here in El Paso, but across this nation. We called then, as we call now, for an immediate, thorough investigation into the pattern of in-custody deaths at all levels of law enforcement operating within the city and county of El Paso, from our city streets to our county jails and our federal detention facilities. The loss of human life while in government custody has become a recurring and deeply troubling reality. In just the first few weeks here of 2026, 3 individuals have died while in federal custody here in El Paso. These deaths are following a devastating 2025 marked by repeated preventable tragedies involving the El Paso Police Department and the El Paso County Jail. Whether the agency is local, county, or federal, the common denominator remains the same: lack of accountability and disregard for the safety and dignity of those in custody. This situation rings all too common because we should have learned, and that's the question we are asking. When will we learn? When will we learn from our mistakes? When are we going to do better? Because we can do better. We call for the same actions in the death of Jonathan Edens in April the year before, when he died in custody of the El Paso Police Department. We call for Xavier, not because he was Hispanic, because he was human, not because he was non-African American, because it doesn't matter the color of your skin. He was human, and he deserves better. Just as he deserves better, just as Jonathan Edens deserves better, just as George Floyd deserves better. We must do better. We call and we echo the comments and sentiments of the family, the law firm, the Melendez law firm, our brothers and sisters of LULAC. We echo their requests for transparency, accountability, and we must do better. Just last month, we were celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King, and I close with his quote: We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We must do better, because if not today, it could be you and your family tomorrow. It could be me, and just as everyone has stated, the ability to call 911 for help should not end in death. We must do better. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Thank you to all of today's speakers, to the Hernandez family, and to our community partners for standing together. We want to thank the members of the press for being here today and for your commitment to reporting the truth. This press conference makes one thing very clear: accountability cannot wait, and justice delayed is justice denied. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Robert Melendez of the Melendez Law Firm to conclude his remarks.
As you can see, this has to stop. It is pervasive throughout this community. Again, the criminal justice system has done nothing. We are making this effort to help Angie honor her son. We want the community to get behind us, to get behind everyone who has spoken here today, to put pressure on city leaders and to effectuate, demand change so that no other person can be a victim to the El Paso Police Department. If this change does not come, myself, Mr. Edwards, we will inform and empower a civil jury to send a message to the city of El Paso and their leaders that this is financially unsustainable. We hope it doesn't come to that. We hope that they will get this message. We hope that they will try and save other people's lives, because it is something that they are required to do. It is something they are paid to do, and it is something that they must do, or other people will also die of another senseless death.